Hey, welcome back to Believe the Target. We got a pretty special episode today. Hang on to your seats because we got Miles Neville in the studio today. Actually, not in the studio, but on the podcast. He's the project engineer at Hornady Manufacturing. How you doing, Miles?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Well, you guys have a podcast, a lot of good information, and I think a lot of it. You guys are putting out good information, but I think a lot of it gets misunderstood and kind of used as a blanket on a lot of stuff. And
yeah, and it's kind of a balance that we kind of have to fight with between giving exact information, I guess you could say, and then something that's digestible for most people. Most of the listeners, right? Because a lot of this stuff gets pretty deep in the weeds pretty quick. So I can see how people take it out of context, and we see that ourselves, and I have to correct that from time to time as well.
Yeah, when I had Jaden on, he says you guys can control what you say, but you can't control what people hear, which is
right.
It's
Absolutely,
it's a tough thing to do.
Jaden is a good one with words.
Yeah. So, obviously you did an episode. You guys have done many on different things that you guys have tested. And I guess the latest one you guys did was on load development, which it kind of covers everything, or not everything, but many of the other episodes that you guys have done.
Yeah.
But what I want to, and what ends up happening is, at least from my experience, because I interview multiple different people, and I'll have somebody like I recently had Jeff Pinehart who set a world record, 80 shots, 170 thousandths of an inch for 80 shots, and he said on that interview that he found that his seating depth was off from one championship to another. He changed his seating depth, and all of a sudden that just changed everything. And then I had people say, well, that's BS. The Hornady guys say seating depth doesn't matter. So that didn't do it, and I'm going, all right, this is the guy that actually did it. No one else has ever done it ever, because it's a world record.
Right.
He's telling us what he did. Now, and this is kind of what I want to discuss. You guys, what you guys are doing and what they are doing is totally different. Am I correct?
Yeah, I don't know if you'd say totally different, but it's not the same target, right? Like most of what we're looking for is kind of like I would say practical precision, whether that's long range hunting or PRS matches. It may even dip into like what you guys are doing with F class or Benchrest, but that's a very small minority of people that are reloading, or even precision rifle reloading, right? That's the top of the top end of stuff. And I think our podcast, really, we kind of got to gear it more back towards center, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, no, I understand. And because you guys haven't said the seating depth doesn't matter. You just said that it doesn't matter enough to really spend too much time with it. Am I understanding that correctly?
And in the cartridges that I've tested, right, like I can't tell the difference from a 20 shot or 35 shot sample from one to the next I can't tell if the difference in results are actually from the seating depth or just the variability of repeating the same test. But that's with the components I'm using at the level of precision that I'm getting with my accuracy fixture. So while I am, poking around to try to find the most accurate load that I possibly can, it's not in that same scope of somebody who's shooting 80 shots at 0.17, you said?
Yeah.
Is that one? I'm not familiar with
that.
No,
so what they do eight 10-shot groups.
Okay. And he agged 0.17?
0.17.
Was that the aggregate or the?
Yeah, that was the ag.
Okay.
0.1706.
Okay. Gotcha.
So, so I think the difference lies in the fact that, for example, you are given, I don't know, 6 arc, Hornady brass, Hornady bullet, whatever brass, whatever powder you have available, whatever primer you're testing, and you test it, right?
Yeah.
You're not really looking for a specific group size. You're just trying to see
Yeah,
what
yeah.
it
I think
does. Am I
the
correct?
goal of our load development method is to get the bulk of the precision capacity that we can with as little effort as we can put in. That's kind of,
Correct.
and I think that's like a lot of the traditional methods, ladder testing, OCW, what have you, is people playing around with different settings to try to find, the best thing that they can get. And I think a lot of that traditional stuff gets lost in the weeds with small sample size testing. So there's more of us just saying, hey, when we actually put this, to a large sample test and we go through these different variables, these are the ones that we've isolated as being the heavy hitters. Like, you can play with seating depth and you can fine tune things in. If you've already got a really good shooting load, you could probably play with that and see some effect. Maybe not. I don't know. It's going to be case by case dependent, but for sure, changing powder charge or especially changing the powder type or the bullet type is going to give you drastically different results quicker. And so you can cycle through smaller sets of that rather than wade through different seating depth, different powder charge at small increments, right? There's and I think I outlined this in one of the podcasts. There's two ways to go about this. One is you do the shortcut way that we kind of described in that last episode, and then the other one is the method of exhaustion. And you can expect to spend 500-600 rounds going through each variable and statistically evaluating each one of them, and you can get some pretty incredible results that way. But that's not in the cards for most people.
Yeah. So I guess the bottom line is you're just looking for something. For example, I guess to isolate really what we're talking about, what group size are you looking for?
So if I shoot a 20 shot group in our 200-yard indoor tunnel with like my PRS rifle, I'm generally happy if it's under 1.5 inches at 200 yards. So that's 3/4 minute. And that's anything over that, I start like poking around and seeing if there's things I can fix. What's really good is in that 1.0 to 1.1 range for 20 shots at 200 yards. So that's right around a half minute.
Right. And because you guys win in PRS, you win by hitting the target. You don't win by having the smallest group.
There's no score rings. It's hit or miss.
And which is I think that's the difference, and that's the thing that I think people don't understand. Because, for example, you're saying 1.5 inches at 200 yards, I'm good. You know what I mean? Because it fits what you're trying to do. You don't need to spend any more time
to
doing
clarify that too, though. That's a 20 to 30 shot group,
right? So
that's no worse than 3/4 minute. So inside of that too, like if I were to just shoot a string of 3-shot or 5-shot groups, there's a ton of 0.1s, 0.2s, 0.3s, 0.4s in there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
but I guess what I'm asking
traditionally, it sounds worse than what people are traditionally used to seeing, because they're like, oh, I go shoot a 5-shot group, I'm shooting 0.3s, 0.4s, right? Sure. Yeah. But then when you pile all those into the same group, most people are probably bigger than what they think, bigger than what you'll see from a 3 or 5-shot group.
Yeah, so from that episode, the load development, you discuss how you make big changes. If powder, bullet, and for example, if it's not happy right away, you might change the powder altogether, or you go in half grain increments, just big increments to see what changes, right?
Yep.
But so I guess the question is, what if you instead had to look at things like the Benchrest shooter instead of say, Miles, I know you got 1.5 inch group at 200 yards, but instead the goal is to get a .170 for 80 shots. What would the approach be? How would it be any different?
That at that point I'd be going through the exhaustive method, where I'd pick a cartridge that's got a long barrel life, because I'm going to burn up 600, 700 rounds tweaking with every little variable to find absolutely the best thing. And so, like, for example, I've had some 6.5 Creedmoor stuff that I did early on that was like no BS, 20 shots, never worse than a half minute. Right. And so inside of that, if you were to aggregate 10-shot groups out of that, those 10-shotters are obviously going to be better on the average than those 20-shotters that are in that half minute ballpark. Right. So then you're edging into 10-shotters averaging 0.3 something, maybe 0.2. And then it may even get like, I don't know, was this guy's short range bench rest?
Yeah, short range bench rest.
So a lot of those guys are running handmade bullets, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so
that's kind of what I mean, right? I think
Yeah.
what these guys have done, I don't think, I know for a fact they have done. They've exhausted the available components.
Right.
And they it's still not good enough. Right.
You're going out and you're buying 10,000 pieces of brass and you're sorting them till they are exactly the same shot to shot to shot. You're weighing primers,
and then they're you know, and for example, you know, you guys say, well, seating depth in our testing didn't really matter because, you know, if you go from 1.5 inches to 1.550, you're like, it's not really
right.
Now, in short range bench rest, if you go from 0.175 to 1.70, you just set a world record versus you came in fifth place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for those guys, they're chasing, you know, I've heard you guys say, well, it wasn't a big enough difference. Well, these guys are chasing tenths of an inch or hundredths of an inch. You know?
Yeah. And the big enough difference thing. Well, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying, I think that's in my head, you know, in my opinion, that is the difference. We're especially, you know, I'm a long range competitor, and we look at things differently because you guys are simply testing what's at hand, and it is what it is. You just say these are the results. For us, if I got the result that you're talking about, you know, 1.5 inches for 20 shots at 200 yards, that's not good enough. You know, so we shoot 20 shot matches, right? So at 1,000 yards, if I'm more than one MOA, that's a no-go. Right. Because the target's one MOA. So for 5 shots, I like to be less than 3 inches or even in the 3-inch mark. All right. For 10 shots, I like to be about 4, and 20 shots, I like to be about 6.5.
Right.
That's it. If it's bigger than that, revisit something, you know, change something, play around with something, shoot it again, change, you know, and that's, I think that is the misunderstanding. A lot of people hear what you guys say, and then when someone like in the competitive world, like we do, where we go, well, we change seating depth, and then they go, well, the Hornady guys say seating depth doesn't matter, and I'm like, well, no, wait, I'm telling you it matters because we're measuring. You know, if I can shrink my groups from 7 inches to 6 inches at 1,000 yards, that is massive.
Yeah.
And for you guys, it's, you know, an inch at 1,000 yards.
Right.
It
my
really
1,000-yard plate is 15 inches probably at the smallest, right? So, but yeah, and context is everything there, right? And I think, again, like, you know, how many people are in that bench rest? I'll clump these together. Bench rest, the ELR crew, and F class, I think, and maybe even Palma. That's kind of dwindled off.
Palma's open sight, so their target's pretty big.
But that crew, you know, collectively is the collection of probably the best shooters and the best reloaders that are out there. And you guys, if you're there and you're competitive, you guys already know what you're doing. Whereas like our podcast is geared towards basically, you know, maybe encompass some of that and then everybody else. And I think, most people,
and I agree that, and I understand that, but where I want to have this discussion with you, is you and I are not enemies, and people think we are. You know what I mean? And that's and that's the thing that I wanted to clarify, because like they'll send me pretty nasty messages on social media and go, "You guys are idiots. The Hornady guy said this," and I just shake my head because they don't understand. They really don't understand that there's a difference in what we do and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, now, there's a fundamental contextual difference in what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, but they think what, you know, the things that you guys discuss would work, would apply in a very high precision game like Benchrest, it won't get you there. You know, it'll get you.
It might get you close, but you're not.
Yeah, it ain't gonna get you there, and that's the thing that I think there's the separation in. So the explanation I give people is, I said they're just testing what they have. I said if I have a dump truck, and somebody gives me a set of racing slicks, and I go, well, let me see if racing slicks really make a difference. And I test them in my dump truck. I'm going to find out that, guess what? Racing slicks don't do anything.
Right.
Well, that's because now, if I was trying to get that dump truck to go 10 seconds and a quarter mile, I'm going to find out the number one, I shouldn't use a dump truck.
Right.
And at some point, I'm going to find out that, okay, now I need racing slicks. Oh my God, now they matter. You know what I'm saying?
Right. You're shaving off. Yeah. Just that last little bit of what you can get.
Yeah. And that's the misunderstanding. And that's the one clarification I wanted to make sure that we made, because people just try to blanket everything, which is, in my opinion, it's a bit dangerous, because it's not all the same. Just like you shouldn't use Benchrest procedures for PRS. I mean, I tell people that all the time. They they reach out to me and they go, "Hey, I'm loading for my PRS rifle and I want to start neck turning." I go, don't even bother. It's not going to do anything for you.
There's a level.
You're better off practicing off a barricade than turning necks. Whatever time you're going to spend turning necks, go spend it shooting off a barricade. You're going to get more gains out of that.
You can load, what is it Seth says? You can't load your way, into shooting better. And I think that's a fundamental difference too, right? We've got a lot more hands-on with the rifle. Actually they're shooting off different positions, unsupported, supported, more or less, right? Different ways to do that. It's a lot more dynamic. And so, the target size reflects that, I think.
I think precision rifle series is an oxymoron, the whole precision rifle thing, because
because you can't, you need a certain level of gear.
I understand, but what I'm getting at is you guys are not, the winner is not defined by precision. I know it is, and this is where it gets kind of muddy, right? Because it's like you can't have accuracy without precision. Yeah. But it's like in Benchrest, it is purely. Benchrest for group is purely precision, because if I beat you by 1/10,000th of an inch, my groups are smaller, I win, right? That's precise. Right. They don't even care about accuracy. You don't even have to be centered up. You know, it's purely precision. Yeah. And I get it, but precision. So this is just my story, right? When I started shooting PRS, I tried it back in like 2017. And it was just a way for me I like dipping my toes into other disciplines, because there's always something to learn. Right. And so I went and tried it, and I go, how do you guys call this precision when you guys literally make me shoot off the wobbliest of props? It's like, okay, shoot prone. Okay, that's pretty precision. Okay, now you're going to shoot off this boat or this platform that's hanging off of chains. Right. And I'm like, that is like, I don't know. It's I guess oxymoron is pretty strong, but it's what I mean is like they're trying to do the best they can to not make you be precise. That's literally the name of the game. Right.
It's and I hate to say realistic. It's not really, but it is a skills, it's a skills driver, right? It's more of a hands-on thing than it is
absolutely
the equipment. There's certainly a level of precision in the equipment that's necessary to get you to the top level competitor, but if you take Austin Orgain and you give him a 1 minute of angle factory rifle, he's gonna still stomp most of the competitors out there, regardless of
and I guess that's really the difference. If you give anybody you give them a half MOA rifle or a quarter-minute rifle. This thing is just tuned to the max. Right. And they come and shoot an F-class match, which, we're shooting off of, and that's what I mean. We're shooting off of front rest, rear bags, mechanical, everything. Like, everything's made so that you can be as precise as possible. Yep. And there's no wind. You can have a kid and they tell them, just hold center the whole time. And they're going to beat a lot of really accomplished shooters if you give those guys a 1 MOA gun. You know what I'm saying? Yep. And that's in our sport, the precision of the rifle does a lot of the work. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a fair point. Now that we got through low development, that was easy. So nodes. Let's talk about nodes, because this is another one that can we discuss nodes, and can you explain what a node is and And bottom line, whether they do or do not exist.
I can't tell you what a node is because I don't think I've seen one yet. Okay. But I can tell you the general theory is that somewhere there is either a velocity or a powder charge. Basically, the general concept is that as you go through the powder charge, there's this sinusoidal behavior of increased precision, decreased precision, increased precision, decreased precision, right? And then so at those points where you have increased precision, those are generally what people refer to as nodes. In my experience, what most people are seeing when they see that as they step through powder charge or maybe through seating depth or, whatever other metric variable that they change, generally what you're seeing is the noise of small sample testing. And an unfortunate, I think, reality of small arms ballistics, like external ballistics, is that you probably need hundreds of rounds to very, very, very precisely define the probability density function of a given component combination. So whatever that is, that load plus that barrel, that action, that gun, you to really, really define that, like in a statistical sense, you're talking like you probably need a couple hundred rounds. Because even when I say I do 20 shots, well, that's 4 or 5 times more than most people are willing to do to test a load, right? Most people 3 shots, 5 shots, maybe 10s. When I say do 20, they're like, well, that's a waste of time. It's a waste of ammo. It's a waste of components. Why would you do that? That is the floor to being statistically significant. And so I guess my point is when you drive that shot count up at each variable change, what you see is that sinusoidal behavior shrinks and shrinks and shrinks until you get almost linear behavior. And so most of what you see when people say they have a velocity flat spot, where like the velocity goes up, dips down, goes flat, goes up again, dips flat, goes up. If you were to draw a line of the true velocity versus powder charge relationship, it would be basically a straight line. And then at each powder charge, you would have the extreme spread in velocity. And then that original wavy path that people get fits right in between, floats around the average, and then fits in between the extreme spread of each one of those. And there can be some divergent trends there where most of what I've seen is that the lower the powder charge, the better the dispersion. But there are exceptions to that. And then the same thing with extreme spread. For the most part, I haven't seen big swings in extreme spread as you go through a powder charge band. But there are some trends where it's either better higher or better lower. Like there are some small trends. Now, again, my point is that you have to shoot a lot of rounds at each sample to have enough information to have confidence in saying, yes, this is actually better, this is actually worse. And I think that's where a lot of people get lost. And you tell that to people and I go, no, I don't need to do that. I don't know. It was, like I said, I've said this before, it was one of the saddest periods of my life as a precision shooter to learn that, because there really is no way to cheat that. I've tried all sorts of different schemes of like, what's the minimum round count? And it basically, the noise goes away, kind of settles out 16 to 18 rounds in. By 20, you kind of got solid data, but there's still variations. So that's why I say when I do a 20-shot test, adjusting seating depth every test, there's variation, and I see variation in the results. But then I would still have to probably repeat those or do an increased sample size of those tests to see if there is actually a real trend there that I'm seeing, or if that's just sample to sample variation.
That's, I guess, where I'm a bit confused, because, you say nodes don't really exist. However, if you drop the powder charge, it becomes more consistent or less dispersion, I think is what you said. Right. Wouldn't that be considered a node? Like it's a happier place.
Yeah. That's fair enough to say that, because I've never taken it down to the point if it trends that way, I guess I've never taken the powder charge down low enough to see where it gets worse again, if it gets worse again. Everything I've seen has been kind of like a gentle slope that gets progressively very, very slightly worse as you increase powder charge. And then with some powders, especially like ball powders that are, usually it's ones that aren't temp stable. You see the same kind of behavior in the pressure and velocity graphs as you increase powder as when you increase temperature, and then they'll get a little bit erratic. And so they'll go linear for a while, and then you'll see them bell horn up and get really bad as you approach the top end of pressure.
If nodes don't exist, why test powder charges?
Because of that slope. So generally what I recommend is if you're like close, but you're getting all the performance you like, but the dispersion's not quite there, and maybe you're going a little faster than you think you absolutely have to, I say back off a half a grain or a grain and see if that tames it in a little bit. Almost, you can try going faster to see if it works for you. I haven't seen a repeatable data set where that has happened. There's a lot of stuff like Varget's a really good powder that I've seen where it's just flatline across the board. Like it doesn't care. Like you keep increasing powder charge up to the point that you need to stop getting ejector swipes, or probably should stop well before that. And it's just flatline. Dispersion data across the board is flatline. So in certain combinations of powder, bullet, cartridge, it doesn't really matter. You can push it all the way up to SAMI max pressure and not run into any problems. With some others, it slightly grows. And again, it just depends on the context of what you're doing. Like for PRS, if I need a 3/4 minute gun or a half-minute gun, then I can push velocity, maybe cheat a little bit and lose a little bit of dispersion, but it doesn't really matter because I'm shooting, minute and a half, minute and a quarter plates, and I can get away with it. But the fast node, slow node stuff that I read about on forums, I've never witnessed that. So I'm not, again, this is the same disclaimer I give in our podcast is just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean it exists. And if somebody's got the data to back it, that it's repeatable and it's real, I'd love to see it. I can't refute your data, right? Like if you do it, like that guy that shot the .1706 ag, I can't refute that. Like he did it, right? And that's 80 shots, so that's a pretty substantial sample size. So
you should go over to Instagram where I posted it, because there's a lot of people refuting it. The Hornady guy said.
Yeah. No,
I get it.
Yeah. And so I mean, there's if something happens, because you see reloading processes, a lot of guys try things in small sample, 3, 5, 10 shots, right? If something happens for 3 shots, or for 5 shots, or for 10 shots, and it's a real change, then it should stay that way, right? Then you should be able to repeat that and do multiple 3 shots, multiple 5 shots, multiple 10 shots. And then when you correlate all that data, then you have a single large sample set. And so whether you did multiple small sets or one single large set, that all should correlate if it is an actual change, and it should stay the same. But it gets into the weeds even further though, because it's not like there are very rare circumstances in reloading where you change one variable and only change one variable, right? Because if I change seating depth, right. Now I've changed the entire dynamics of the shot start. The bullet's closer to the rifling. The pressure and velocity curves are different. The internal volume at the start is different. I've changed the burn rate progressivity of the powder. There is very rare instances where you simply change one, make one simple change and make actually one simple change. So to tie down cause and effect gets very tricky also.
Yeah, and I'm with you on the small sample stuff. We again, we shoot 20-shot groups,
right?
And a lot of people have gotten bit by the 5-shot deal. They'll shoot one 5-shot group, and they say, "Here it is," and then they'll show up and they shoot it for 20 shots, and it just blows up. But which kind of goes back to, and this is where I guess I'm not smart enough to understand this, which is more likely what's happening, which goes back to the nodes, right? If there's no nodes, why does that? Because what they'll do is they'll change a powder charge. So a friend of mine, He's from the West Coast, and he worked up a load, whatever the load was. And this guy's a national champion, so he knows what he's doing.
Right.
And it was shooting amazingly well. Well, now he's going to go to Phoenix. Well, he's worried about the heat now, right?
Right.
I think he dropped it by like 0.5 grains, which if notes don't exist, shouldn't have mattered.
Right.
Well, he goes to Phoenix and he came in last because his gun was just big. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that wasn't small sample. He shot for 3 days and he was punished for 3 days.
Yeah.
And that's where we often see that in F class because we are shooting 20 shot matches, right? That's a large sample, right?
Yeah. And
or
I guess
maybe not the largest, but it's large enough to tell you whether something's working or not.
Yeah. Like I said, it gets real in the weeds and real difficult to isolate cause and effect there though too, right? Because now he's changed location, right? Like he's changed temperature, he's changed powder charge, and it's like piecing together, and then you're shooting at 1,000 yards as well, right? But again, I would contend that if he's shooting through however many relays and it's all bad, that he did something to change it that made it worse. But it could be, I don't know. It could be a lot of things, I guess, is my point, that there's not a clean cut, like, oh, well, I shot it in California and it's awesome. I go to Arizona, drop it a half grain, and now it's bad. You've changed more than one thing at one time. And so to isolate, was it the half grain of powder that did it? Or, can he take those half grain lighter loads, go back to California, and now are they still trash there as well?
Well, that's the thing. I don't know the rest of the story. This happened. I don't want to say what year it was because then people would just go see who came in last. But that was the last time he ever did it.
Right.
He's like, I'm done. I'm just whatever shoots here at home. I'm not going to care about the temperature anymore. I'm just going to travel with it. Right. And of course, he has not had any issues anymore.
Right.
But it was 100 and what is that match? It's like 150 rounds. And that gun just, what he had back home that was about a, I'm going to call it a 0.6, 0.7 MOA at 1,000 yards, turned into a 1.5 to 2 minute gun.
Right.
For, again, not for 20 shots, for the whole weekend. And he was just kicking himself, obviously. But, and that is not an isolated instance. We travel a lot. I travel quite a bit. And this is a pretty common occurrence. Shooters, nobody's going to travel with a gun that doesn't shoot. That's the bottom line.
Right.
Nobody's going to go to South Africa and say, well, I know this gun's not going to win, but I'm going to go anyway. No, nobody's going to spend that kind of money to do that. They go, they have a really good gun, and when they get there, they don't shoot.
Something's changed, yeah. And I imagine this. It reminds me of, so last year I shot gas gun in the precision rifle series, that's an oxymoron, maybe. But it reminds me of that, where I think you guys are tuned down to such a level. And what I found with gas gun is that there's a handful of things that in a bolt gun don't matter. To the level of resolution that I care about, there's things in a bolt gun that where I put the bipod on the rail, whether I shoot off a bipod or a bag, what my muzzle device is, necessarily, right? Like I've seen them change things a little bit, but nothing drastic, right? Whereas with a gas gun, where the gas tube is, if it's touching the bolt carrier or not, if it's perfectly centered through the upper or not, where the bipod is, whether I'm shooting off a bipod or a bag, what the muzzle device is, and several other, like what the gas setting is, right? Those are all things that are on or off. Like each one of those things individually can completely change the dynamics of how that rifle shoots. So I could get my gas gun in the best case to float between 3/4 minute and a minute and change, minute and a quarter maybe, for 20 shot strings, which for a gas gun is like pretty solid, right? Like if I'm a good shooter and I take a minute and a quarter gun to a PRS match, I should be able to hit most targets. But then going location to location or changing muzzle device, a suppressor for a break or a different break for a different break, or even the same model with a different bore size in the breaks, I would get like completely different performance. And I take my maybe roughly minute of angle rifle and I'd get 2 minutes, and so just completely wreck it. And then I'm on a stage, right? Like hold, shoot, okay, make a correction, shoot, and just wildly different shots each time. Like I know I did the right thing through that, and this gun is just like throwing some curveballs at me. That's kind of what that reminds me of, is that there's something within the system, whether it's the load or the gun or the bedding or something, that you guys have it tuned down to such a level that you're seeing those same kind of changes in a bolt gun that to me, okay, whatever, it doesn't matter. But like I see it on my resolution scale in a gas gun for sure, where like one little thing goes wrong and now I'm out of it. You know what I mean? And it's exactly the same ammunition. I've tested it in our tunnel repeatedly. I've tested it out at our range repeatedly. I'm confident that it's good. Go shoot a match and then like blow through 10 rounds. Like where did any of those go? Right? Like, so I don't know if that's necessarily the fault of the load or if it's external conditions within the gun.
Well, he went back home and obviously bumped the charge back up, and then it was all happy again. That's why he's 100% certain it was the load, and he has never done it ever since because live and learn.
Yeah, it's just tricky, I guess, because there's a lot of things that have to go right for everything to go right, and there's a lot of any one of those on the list, whether it's the load or the gun or the scope or the mounts or bedding or whatever. That's
the problem with 1,000-yard shooting, right? Anything goes bad.
And that's the other problem too. So like if you look at like the testing I do in a 200-yard indoor tunnel, that's pretty stripped down, isolate the variables externally, right, in between the gun and the target as much as we possibly can. Like there's still a positive flow vent that runs through. There still is airflow there, but the effects of it as far as like crosswind and stuff are dramatically reduced. When you look at shooting from you to 1,000 yards away, there's pockets of air density change. There's mirage. There's you've seen it, wind gust this way, that way, all the way down. It gets even that much harder to parse out the contributing factors of what's what, and we see that with like the radar testing and some of the drag testing that we do as well. Like it can get really, really tricky sometimes to parse out the individual effects of like, oh yeah, that did it. Well, it's like, well, some combination of this did that.
No, there's obviously a lot of that, but when all he changed was the load, he went to crap, goes back home, right? And, I'd have to revisit, but I know he went back to the old load, and then he's like, son of a gun, and that's when you go to just kick yourself in the
Yeah, did he go back and test half grain light again?
I don't know. Like I said, it's been a long time. And, but I remember that because the reason I remember is because I remind him as often as I can. Right.
Yeah. No, and that's the one point I think I call myself the special kind of stupid that I'll go back and test the failures, right, for large sample size to see if I don't know. Yeah, it's counterintuitive, but there is some to be learned about by doing that, and that's kind of like what got most of the collective knowledge here started, was actually don't just keep funneling to like the best. Actually go back through and test all of those, and then you see that
sweep it all again.
Right.
So I've done some testing, and back to and again, I'm going to say it's inconclusive at best. I mean, in my eyes, it's pretty conclusive, but I don't have the capacity, the background to explain to you why it's doing what, like you guys would. But I took 3 different loads and I shot a monthly match, and pretty good, absolute junk. And I wasn't even, we shoot for score, and I wasn't even adjusting my elevation.
Right.
I was literally just testing 20 shot groups. And of course, everybody's asking me, like, what happened? I'm like, what do you mean what happened? Well, what happened to your rifle? Nothing happened to my rifle. I'm just testing,
Right.
So I go back the next month, and I took the exact same loads all over again. And load number 1, I shot a perfect score, 200 with 13 X's, which
nice.
means 20 shots inside of 1 MOA, 13 of which were inside a half MOA. I take the next load, which is 3/10 lower in charge, and I shoot another 213. Okay. And a 600 at 1,000 is quite rare. And I thought, man, I've never shot a 600. I should shoot the same load that I just shot, because I had enough ammo, and go for the 600, because it was fairly calm. And I said, no, I was here to do a test, so I'm going to do a test. But I just know, I don't know, but it blew up last month. Let's see what happens. Sure enough, it blew up again.
Right.
And I said, okay. So what I did is I just went between load 1 and 2, which 2 months in a row showed the best consistency. And I just loaded in the middle, and I went and I just recently shot the Texas State Championship with that load. That was all the load development that I did. Like I didn't change anything else. I used the same seating depth from my previous barrel. I used, the only thing I changed was tuner, but we're not going to get into that. I just tuned it with a tuner, but the point is, I used to use the same load. And I just went and I won the Texas State Championship with that load, which literally took me, 60 shots. If I had believed it the first time, but I wanted to do it again. Right. And I swept through it again. And sure enough, the same load was bad, which I don't give a whole lot of context, because it's more fun that way on Instagram. And I just put those 3 groups on there, and then I just said, notes don't exist. ... And of course, people just piling on. Most of them telling me how wrong I am, but I didn't say anything. All I said is, this is my data. This is all I have to go by.
Yeah.
This stuff I won with. This stuff I tried it 2 months in a row, but 2 months in a row I couldn't clean a single target. This other stuff, back to back, I clean targets. So again, that's the reason my podcast is called Believe the Target, because it doesn't matter what you say, what I say. It doesn't matter. If we go and we shoot whatever, we're going to be judged on the target, not on, they're not going to ask you for your background, your PhD or anything,
Yeah.
You can just the target. And for me, whether I'm right or wrong, it's the target that I believe, because that's going to get me wins over anything else.
Yeah. No. And it's, I don't know. It's entirely okay for people to get different results from testing, right? That's if that never happened, then what's the point, right? Like, how are we going to progress? How are we going to find new things? And I will say, most of our testing that I've done, especially, has been at 200 yards, right? And so there may be artifacts of whatever happens with a load that may present itself 600, 800, 1,000 yards downrange that I may be missing. And especially like the tuner testing that we did, I think all of it was at 200 and 300 yards. And I think admittedly, like, Jaden didn't follow the tuner manufacturer's recommendations for adjustment when he did his testing, right? Now, a lot of our testing coincides with other people's testing, whether that's other companies or other agencies like the DoD and stuff. But I want to reaffirm that, like, what we've seen is not the end all be all, and we haven't tested everything. There's no way to test everything like all the way, right? So if you're getting results and you can document it and you can like isolate, parse out, like, yeah, I did this, I did that. Okay. And then like, this is the only change between them twice in a row. Then I think that's good data, right?
Well, here's the way I look at it. for example, let's say you were going to come and start shooting F class, right? And not only shoot F class, you wanna be a national champion, and you have an option to pick a mentor, and whoever you pick is going to mentor you. Who would you pick? Somebody that's losing or somebody that's winning?
You usually aim for like the top 10.
Right. So you're going to pick somebody that's winning, right? And to me, people are winning for a reason. They don't get lucky all over again, right? Like luck is one thing, but and in our world, if you're not winning, you're lacking something. You know, whatever it is, either mentally or physically or the rifle or whatever, but we're always trying to find something, right?
Yeah.
And
you're
then
not finding the pieces of the puzzle that you need to get you there.
Right. And that's why we're always turning stones and trying to figure out what else is out there, you know? And you'll find that the top shooters, because it is such a hard sport, you know, it's I mean, you're separating the top guys by 1 point out of 130 shots. They're separated by one shot, you know?
Right.
So when they find something, because they're always looking, they're always searching, they're always looking. They find something and it's working, they keep doing it, and then it's giving them results, right? And then you'll see them just go and be at the top, and they don't share that information very easily because it's literally the edge that they have. Because everybody at the top is it's a really good shooter. That's comes down to that, right?
Yep.
And then the years go by. And then that stuff leaks out because, you know, they'll try to help a friend, and then their friend wants to help their friends. And at some point, it just kind of leaks out, right? And that's kind of how things happen. But, you know, it's I've literally took a rifle from a new shooter, and I'm mentoring him. And, you know, he just can't. He can't get this thing to shoot pretty good. And he has a custom barrel. He has all the works. I said, why don't you come over to my place for a week? I'm going to mentor you for 1 week. I said, but the deal is you have to agree that I can do whatever I want to do to that rifle as if it was mine. Like if I want to chop the stock in half, then I chop it in half.
Right.
So he agreed to the terms. And I took his rifle from 17 inches down to 8 for 20 shots. At 1,000 yards. I took his ES from 45 down to 14 for 20 shots. Okay. Now, he could have been out there, I don't know how long. He wouldn't have figured this stuff out in a very long time. Because these are things that I know, right? And a select few know these things. But this is stuff that we don't pass on that easily because it's an advantage, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes we just assume people know this, right? I know you've been there where you know something and you're
so
like,
much, I mean, the spectrum starts from like never held a gun before up to the, the very tops of whatever shooting sport discipline.
Yes. So that ends up happening, and I don't know. Like I said, there's some things that, you know, I was having a conversation with somebody today, and they were asking me. It was about tuners, and he goes, well, how come you know, the results or whatever? And I said, listen, I don't understand why. I honestly do not understand why they haven't been able to make them work. I'm not there for the testing. I don't know what they're doing. They're just publishing the results. And this is back to, they are using their stuff. They're using it their own way. And in their own testing, they haven't found it to work. Fine. However, I said, I got a wall full of medals that tells me that they work. And they go, well, winning doesn't prove that they work. And I go, oh, it does, because when I got there, that rifle was shooting like crap. And it was, the only thing I changed was the tuner. And all of a sudden I took this rifle that wasn't shooting very good and I turned it into a rifle that shoots really good, you know?
Right.
And I started using tuners for my own purpose. I was actually hiding it in plain sight. And of course, over the years, everybody has the same experience that I just described. They had a rifle that didn't shoot. They're shooting for a day or two and nothing's happening. They turn that tune and all of a sudden it's like they're shooting a different rifle. Now, what does it do? I don't know. I tell people, I don't know what it does. John Myers shared his findings with me. He is a mechanical engineer that studied tuners for 10 years, and he has graphs and charts, and it was a group of friends. They all got together, and he shared that stuff with me. But I'm testing it to this day, and it seems to be proving that it works. And the bottom line is, it's very similar. I don't even know how to explain it, but it's not consistent if you just keep using the same setting. It's not consistent throughout the day. Just like your dope data. There you go. Just like your dope data is not consistent throughout the day, right?
Yeah.
Apparently, tuners are the same way. And I'm still testing. So far it's been working. But again, I don't know. See, tuners is one of those things that when they work, for example, if I go, because I turn it before the match, right? I set my tuner to my setting, and I go shoot a match. I shoot a perfect score. Great. And then later in the day, I got to shoot again. I take some readings, look at my data book, and I make the corresponding change to the tuner, and then I shoot another perfect score. Now the question is, would I have shot a perfect score anyway? I don't know, right? Because it's impossible to test that, and however, I am shooting better scores now than I was before he told me what he did to ride the tune all day long.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And again, I'm not smart enough to even explain it in detail, but the bottom line is it's very similar to trajectory. It's if you tested the same setting all day long at 1,000 yards, you're gonna say, well, this is not repeatable. This sometimes it hits high, sometimes it hits low, but then with deeper understanding, you go, we can actually correlate it to something else, and now, so tuners are very similar, which I believe is the reason that people haven't been able to prove that they're repeatable, just like you wouldn't be able to prove that a ballistic tape was repeatable without changing it through the day.
If there's something that changes the temperature of the barrel or something that causes a shift in that performance, then we're not likely to see it. And I think that relates mostly back to the fact that the bulk of our use case is I'm going to carry this rifle out somewhere for hunting or for a PRS match, and I don't have sighters, right? I go up, I get my 2 minutes on the stage, and that's my 2 minutes, and that's what I've got. Or I've got, and that's why shooting or hunting, and I got the 1 shot or 2 shots maybe, right? And that's all that there is. And so I think,
and that's why I tell my users, find here goes the word, find a node and just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. Don't be cranking it back and forth. When they go to turn it all the time, it's actually, if you don't know what you're doing, which even I don't know that I know exactly what I'm doing yet, because writing that tune is really hard.
I would say when you get
leave it alone. Leave it
to that level of precision in a rifle barrel, and that combination of things that's going on, you're not alone there. There's a certain level of what happens during dispersion that you can measure a lot of things during the firing event, and where the bullet ends up doesn't always pencil out to where the measurements say that it should have gone. And it's basically just a data gathering issue. Like the scale of it is so small, and the frequency that you need to collect the data is so small that there definitely is room for us to miss things at this point, right? Like to be able to nail down, that's why that's doing it now. And then when we change this one thing, whatever it is, temperature of the barrel or whatever, that's why now this setting works. Like,
you said, there's that one thing that you can change, which is
if there's one thing that I've learned not to do, It's to say that something can never happen because you will find somebody that will, that can make it happen, or right. And then it's like, okay, yeah, they're absolutes are dangerous. So I will say that.
Yeah, that's for sure. But yeah, it's all good stuff, man. Like I said, I'm a fan of what you guys do. I mean, keep kicking rocks. I mean,
Yeah.
I wish you guys would take a deep dive into kind of the absolute precision stuff, because then maybe you guys can find something we haven't found. But then again, if you did, then you'd tell the whole world, which
well, it just drives everything, drives the whole thing better, though. Like, because if you look at, I know and PRS is maybe a little bit different, but from when I started shooting that style match 10 years ago to what's capable now, like if I could go back in time, I'd win every match. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So just the components, the equipment, the skill set, all of it is just progressively getting better and better. And I think that's a cool thing to see. And that's kind of what we would like to drive as well with our podcast, getting that information out there. Because I will say there is a certain level, I hope we can agree on that, of old style dogma to reloading methods that isn't effective at getting to the end goal of a better shooting load.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of ways that people have traditionally gone around it or gone about it that you burn a ton of rounds to get nowhere.
Absolutely. And I help a lot of people. I have a website where I literally help people learn reloading and shooting and just get them into the sport. Get them past the frustration part. And get them to the point where hey, just go shoot a match, be confident enough, or whatever they goal may be. Hey, I just want to shoot under sub MOA. I can help you. That's easy,
Yep.
or my goal is to shoot a match or whatever. So, I said, just go to my website, sign up for my forum. I'm there. That's kind of my teaching medium nowadays. But, I do get a lot of questions about reloading, just through social media and all those things. And yeah, oftentimes they go, hey, I've been reloading for 40 years and my dad was reloading for whatever. And I'm not so sure there's anything you can teach me.
Right.
And I go, well,
how willing are you to learn?
I said, well, there's a difference between reloading for, 30 years and reloading for 1 year 30 times, because that's oftentimes what happens. They learn just the basics and then just rinse and repeat for 30, 40, 50 years. And they're never out there doing like what we're doing or what you guys are doing, where you're just kicking rocks. And, like for us, it's like, how do I get this thing how do I get these groups smaller? How do I get them more consistent? How do I win more matches? Right. And that's what we're about. I can tell you off the air some of the things I'm testing, and I know you probably just scratch your head, go, wow, what, things that like the normal person would never even consider. But I'm looking for that. I don't need much. I just need 1 point. If I can get 1 point at every match higher, that's enough to most of the time win.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, yeah.
It's not much, and that's, in PRS, it's a super hard sport. I've tried it. It's fun. It's very fun. It's very dynamic.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a totally different sport. Yeah. There is a certain requirement of precision, right? You can't show up with a 3 MOA rifle, but half a MOA, 3/4 MOA, you're gonna
do fine. Yeah. It's up to you at that point, right?
Yeah. And, spend the time practicing, right?
Yeah.
But in what we do, it doesn't matter. You can be the best shooter in the world. If you have a big gun, you're not going to win.
Yeah. Yep. No, and I think that's a fair distinction. I think from the that's kind of your beginning point. Yeah, that there's context that you got to keep in mind when you take in any information, and I think we generally speaking, we're looking for, I call it a robust system, where that's like I can load ammo. And a lot of the testing I've done is just for factory ammunition. Is there a way I can improve factory ammunition to make it shoot better in a wide array of different guns? But at the end of the day, I'd like to load my year's ammo, put it in an ammo can, and then take that same ammo, that same rifle, not mess with anything in between, pull up my Ford off, and roll through whatever I'm doing, whether that's hunting or match shooting or whatever, and take that setup and have it function every time, and then have it perform good enough to hit the targets that I'm aiming at. And that is a different world than I got to squeeze out every last little drop of everything I can get to hit the X ring on a paper target.
Yeah. It's obviously reliability is probably the top of both of our,
goals, I would sacrifice a quarter MOA gun to a half MOA gun for ammo that fit and chambered and extracted every single shot.
Well, yeah, a gun, one 1/8 MOA gun that can't feed.
Right.
It's really it's useless, right?
Yeah.
And that's where.
And if the ammo has to be so daintily handled that I can't put it in a magazine or I can't hike it across a mountain, right? Talking like either super light neck tension or neck turn case, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's no such thing as a free lunch, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The trade-offs and everything.
Yeah. But good stuff, man. Well, I appreciate you doing this. I think hopefully this will. Number one, I hope it gets people excited about just getting out there and shooting. This is good stuff. Get out there, test stuff for yourself. Take what you guys have to offer. Maybe take a little bit of what I have to offer, or I don't care. I don't care who gets you motivated. Just get out there, shoot. Bring a buddy with you. Teach them how to shoot. Let's just grow the sport. We're all together. We're all have the same common goal in mind, and which is just. Man, keep that Second Amendment going and just have fun.
Absolutely.
Enjoy it.
Yeah. And there's going to be haters and gotcha gamer guys, and that's what they do.
Well, that's what they do, man. The haters hate. Let them hate.
Yep.
All right, Miles. Thanks for being here. Take care, brother.
Absolutely. It's been fun. Thank you.